gang, Donna here. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing Matt Caruana. Matt has a story about when he was 16, feeling very disconnected and questioning his self-worth and wondering if he even made a difference, if he even mattered, because he had always thought that he was supposed to have a purpose and he was left feeling empty. So Matt decided one day to take a flying leap off of a building, and that leap would change his life forever. But you know what? As bad as that may seem and sound, it actually has a pretty positive outcome. So tune in and listen. Hi, Matt. How are you doing today?
Donna, I'm good. Thank you. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So where are you located again?
I'm based in Sydney, Australia. Other side of the
Lovely.
world for you.
Yeah. But lovely Sydney. I mean, Sydney's a beautiful place from what I hear.
I, I, that's all I know.
Well, exactly. I mean, I understand completely because, people are like, oh, because I'm originally from New Orleans. I don't live there now, but it was like, oh, New Orleans. And I'm just like, yeah, it's New Orleans. I get it. When you don't live there, the grass is always greener. But we didn't,
Oh yeah.
you know. So you you have a very interesting story and one that is quite serious. So at 16, you were dealing with depression, correct?
It started when I was younger, but yeah, I was. Yeah.
So what kind of, since it started younger, was it just feelings of inadequacy in school or with people, or what kind of started all of this?
Interesting how you asked about feeling inadequate and all that stuff. If you're looking at me when I was younger, just like it looked like everything was going well, right? Good grades in school, doing well in sports, decently popular, all that stuff. Didn't like primary school, couldn't wait for high school. High school game, again, it was great. Though now, I've always personally felt disconnected from my parents, at least back then, very much back then. And in a way that left a hole for connection in my life. Now, it's not like we had a toxic relationship. I just never felt connected. And growing up in a Catholic upbringing, I was always taught that, everyone has a purpose and that we'll find our purpose through the Bible, through God. And I don't know, like that never sat well with me. I was like, like doesn't make sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but that naturally led to the question, well, okay, well, what's my purpose? What's the meaning of my life? But I didn't know how to answer that. And so then I asked myself another question. Well, if I was gone and dead, would anything actually change around here? I mean, it's hard to answer when you're alive. So I asked myself a third question. And if, purpose is about giving and contributing to others, do I actually add any value? And that's when I had my answer, because I was 12, had no job, lived at home with my parents, which meant no, if I was gone and dead, nothing would change, which meant my life means nothing. That's how I came to my conclusion at year 12. Though everyone around me, it seemed like family, friends, whoever, was all smiling. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, they've got all this figured out. What am I missing? And because I don't feel that. So I didn't feel like I could speak about it to anyone. So I felt like I was the only one. And yeah, 6 months later, I really delved into drugs, started dealing to keep it up. I developed a little bit of an addiction at the time. Though I met a girl while I was in high school. While I was, 13, and she became my girlfriend in year 8, and she started to shift things for me, where, she caught me 4 months into my relationship. So at this time, I haven't told her anything, nothing about drugs, nothing about how I'm feeling. Though she found out that some of my mates at a party she was at were smoking pot and that I had joined them, and she didn't like that. And so she approached me, and I just told her the truth. I'm like, look, yeah, I was high that night, but it wasn't just for no reason. Like, I don't like how I'm feeling. And it's not just the pot. I've been doing coke now for 8 months. I've been dealing to keep it up. But here are the reasons why. Look, like I truly don't feel like I'm worth it. this just helps me get rid of those feelings. I truly feel worthless, and yeah, you're the first person I'm telling. She didn't like really see that coming. She thanked me, but she's like, Matt, I need you to get rid of it. Like, no drugs. And I lied to her. It took initially. It took me 3 months to actually kick the addiction, but thankfully she was in my life, because if she wasn't, God knows where I'd be. Though this left a space in my, I suppose, a hole in my life where I was now feeling so upset, so down, just like, constantly thinking about ending my own life. And so I picked up other habits to try to, kill the emotion, which is what I did. And so I started just by DJing, then playing guitar, and eventually I got into the gym. 14, I'm going to the gym, though I was very skinny beforehand. And there's a common theme so far. If you were to really look at my story, I felt disconnected from my parents, so I tried seeking connection through a greater sense of myself. That didn't work. So I sought connection through drugs. That didn't work. So how did I get connection now? It was through external validation. So when I first started the gym, quickly the boys in the older grades started noticing, like, "Oh, Matt's put on some size," and they gave me all this respect, and I really took that on board. And so I remember at the end of that year, at the end of 2014, I was like, all right, next year I'm going to come back to school. I want no one noticing who I am. And I want to bulk up and diet to the point where I have a great photo to put on my Facebook. And that's exactly what I did. I mean, I trained and I my ass off, ate as much as I could. I mean, it was sickening. And the start of 2016, I had that photo. I uploaded it. And you know what, Donna, I got all the attention in the world, all the likes, the comments, the friend requests, the girls inboxing me, everything. And
But
then then a week later, it was January 9th, 2016. And I had all the external validation in the world, yet internally nothing had changed.
yeah.
So how I'm feeling is still sitting there. And this is a day that's very different. It's a Saturday. It's in the holidays, right? It's actually a day before we're supposed to go on a trip with my family. And my mum's come up to me. She's like, Matt, why are you up so late? Like, it's not like you. You didn't come to the gym with me because I want to train with you. I said, Mum, I'm not going to go to the gym. She's like, are you serious? What are you talking about? You've been going 6 days a week since you've started and you haven't missed a day. It's a Saturday. It's holidays. What do you got on? I was like, Mum, I'm tired. It's one day. Relax. I didn't do much that day. I just stayed by myself. Didn't talk to anyone. Not even like on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And that night, it hit me. There's 3 questions. Yeah, I mean, what's the meaning of my life? If I was gone, would anything change? My valuable part of society? Yeah, like it came to a point where I had said to myself, I've been worthless now for how long? If that really is my label, why don't I go and fulfill my label?
Mm-hmm.
What am I still doing here? What am I doing? So I pulled out my phone and I was like, is there anyone on my contact list that would care the slightest bit if I wasn't here anymore? And the only person I thought was my girlfriend at the time. I spent like, I don't know, half an hour just throwing thoughts into a message and sneaking out of my house. Usually when I'd sneak out, I'd leave, the window in my garage, just like that crack open, just so I could sneak back in. But God, no, I shut it all the way.
And in a way, I hate to say it, not to interrupt, but it's kind of a metaphor, isn't it? You closing that window is like closing the door.
It is. Yeah. And I can remember so vividly sneaking outside of that window and thinking, do I leave this open? There was no, and just not even attending to that thought. I just shut it.
Yeah.
And it was like everything was on autopilot and I couldn't see anything else in that moment because it's a 15-minute walk. I got plenty of time to think otherwise, right? And nah, I get to my local shopping center, I get onto that roof and I run and jump off the edge. The reason I put so much sorry,
I was gonna
John.
say, if you could go back, would you still jump?
No, but let me answer that later on. Like, yeah, in a little more detail. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's funny though, because I put so much emphasis on, you know, the photo, the gym, because everyone around me believed it. Everyone. You know, my parents thinking, shit, Matt's got his stuff together. He's so disciplined. He's always training and eating. He's really strict. My mates think the exact same thing. People around me thinking, God, this guy's buff. He must get a lot of girls. He must be like confident as and all that stuff. The facade was perfect. Anyways, 2 weeks later, I wake up in hospital bed after a coma, and I'm noticing, you know, my whole body is just not only a lot skinnier because I haven't been training, but I have boots on my, like, both my like ankles. I got casts on both arms. I got a neck brace. I've got tubes going through me, and I start freaking out because I can't move half my body. Not only move, but actually feel half my body. And constantly thinking one thought. You know, if I was worthless beforehand and I only wanted to end my own life, how pathetic am I now for the fact that I had failed? And it was this thought that constantly went around my mind. And when I got into the spinal ward like a month later, everyone in there is a lot older than me. You know, I'm 16, I'm a complete baby. Everyone's like, Matt, why are you in hospital? What are you doing with a spinal cord injury? You're so young. People that came to visit me, Matt, why are you in hospital? And yeah, complete strangers that I had never met before. Like, why are you in the wheelchair? What happened to you? Everyone wants to know the exact same question. But, you know, before my injury, I never liked talking. Why did anything change afterwards? It didn't. And so I constantly said the same thing. You know, I had an accident, or I had a fall. That was the most I would ever say, because I was so ashamed the fact that I'd failed. And seeing psychologists twice a day, 24-hour watch, drove me nuts. Though a week before I left hospital was a day that really caught me off guard. Yeah, I was with my mum. We went from the hospital to Penrith. It's about an hour and a half on the train, give or take. Bit of a trip. But I really wanted to get these 2 piercings from this one particular guy. And so mum said yes, and I got them done. And I'm actually, you know, feeling happy after I get these piercings. So, you know, thinking I look cool. It was great. And on the train ride back to the hospital, now halfway through the trip, this guy comes on. Never met him in my life. Like, he's a real sort of like, I mean, you guys call them rednecks. We call them bogans.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
That sort of personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, no filter. He steps on the train, looks to his right, and before he even sits down, Jesus Christ, what the fuck did you do to yourself? Just
wow.
And I tell you, I don't know what it was. I swear it was a mixture of how abrupt he was, but how happy I was in that moment. It just came out. I just thought I attempted suicide. And then he starts laughing and he says, that was pretty fucking stupid, wasn't it? Look at you now.
Wow. Wow.
He has no filter. And that honestly caught me so off guard. I didn't know how to respond or whatever. But the next morning, I'd woken up with this like lightness that I'd never felt in like as long as I could remember. And this was the first time I willingly went and saw my social worker without waiting for her to chase me up. And I shared what had happened. And she's like, Matt, I think there's something there. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, Matt, you opened up to a guy on the train. You said you've been lying to people for 4 months now. You finally said the truth and you woke up feeling lighter. And then she asked a question that I will never forget because I didn't want to hear it at the time. You know, what if you were to open up to the people close to you in life? Could you potentially strengthen the relationship you already have with them? And that I did not want to hear. like I said, because it's just it went against everything that I'd believed at the time. And so I put all my walls were up initially, though that question sat with me and it really stuck with me because she made a good point with that guy on the train. And so I started with my ex-girlfriend and I just shared with her. She came to visit me that afternoon. I had plenty of hours to think about it. And yeah, this was the first time I was actually real with her in a long time. And here I am in my own mind. I'm thinking, I'm in a wheelchair now. I'm still in hospital. I have like severe injuries. 4 months ago, I was buff, I was ripped, I looked great, and now I'm the complete opposite. And she said, Matt, I've never felt closer to you and I've never loved you more.
Wow.
I didn't know what to make of that. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, Matt, this is the first time you've been real with me. And I feel at least in the last 18 months or so. And I was like, oof, I mean, I suppose she's right. And so I started talking to some of my friends. Now, don't get me wrong, some of them didn't want to deal with it, but I found out who my true friends were. And then the two people I thought were never going to know, my parents. And I started sharing with them. And sure enough, our relationship grew so much closer, like as a result. And it's funny because looking back in that moment, the one thing I'd resisted for so long, just sharing or even being able to feel my emotion, is the one thing I had to learn afterwards. I was in hospital. I was forced to feel my emotions, you know, constantly lying to the psychologist and all this stuff. And then this guy on the train comes about. I needed that at the time. And all it was just to me to learn just to open up.
Mhm.
And it's funny because then and now it's now the end of that year. And the social worker, she's asking me, because I'm home now, and I go there for a meeting. She's like, Matt, I've got an opportunity if you're open to it. I'm like, what are you talking about? She says they have about 30 or so young people, same age as me at the time, come through the hospital for a day and they hear some speakers at the end. She said if I was open to it, I could share my story to these 30 young people. And I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to do it. I was like, look, I'm okay. But then she reminded me of that guy on the train and what it did for me. And then she asked the question if it was possible that I could maybe help others help me as well. And then that is what struck me and gave me this feeling in my heart of, I'm sure you know this, Dawn, of like, it's like complete like certainty in a way. Even though I'd said no, this thought said like, you know, if I could help someone, how would that feel? And so I just said yes. And my first time sharing was atrocious.
Of course, the first time's always the worst.
I was shaking. I was so scared. I didn't know how to do it. And like as I'm there shaking, it just baffles me because I'm having young people come up and shake my hand, share how I say, Matt, you inspired me, Matt. Like I want to be there for make sure I'm there for my friends. Like in that moment, everything like I believed for the last 5 years had been challenged. Yeah. Was I worthless? No, I was of value to someone in that moment, and this like it was so overwhelming. I just tear up like uncontrollably like afterwards, and I was asked to do it again. I was asked like, Matt, like by the manager of the program. She called me up straight after. She's like, Matt, I want you to come with me to that school and like for their parent student like evening. I was like, sure. I just said it. But going from 30 people in a little room in a hospital to now 300 people in a hall, I'm even more nervous with the same things happening. And so I'm like, I just want to keep adding value to people. And it started off just by me sharing my story. That's all I did at the start. But then I was like, no, I want to run workshops for young people, then for parents. So I'm breaking into the corporate world, high schools, universities, wherever I can. And, you asked me, Matt, would you not have jumped if you had the choice? The reason I said no was because look at the position I'm in now.
Oh, I know.
I wouldn't change a goddamn thing because yes, what happened to me was bad. I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, though that's what allowed me to find my purpose and what's meaningful to me in life. I promise you, had I not done it, I wouldn't be here today.
Oh, I can understand that.
Yeah.
I posed that question to you because I wanted to know how much you had learned from it. And I knew you did. I mean, it was kind of a given question. I knew what the answer was. And the thing is, suicide now compared to, the first episode I ever did on the podcast was about my mother's suicide attempt, one of her many suicide attempts. And I can sit here and tell you how it is to deal with the aftermath and how you don't, her friends didn't know a darn thing that was going on. They didn't have any idea that she was suicidal. Not a clue.
Mm.
My grandmother knew, I knew, my stepfather didn't care. And he was the one that could have saved her because he lived with her. We didn't. But that being said, if we fast forward now, I think you speaking to young people is a priority, because when I was in high school, we didn't have to worry about likes. You got bullied at school or you got liked at school, and that was it. You didn't have this instant gratification online that can screw with your head. And that's why I think you going to talk to younger people is an amazing gift, because how many kids are sitting there going, well, I'm going to digress because I was going with a thought and it still fits because it made me pop in my mind. Because in New Orleans, I moved my 10th grade junior year. So I was 15 and we moved up to another place called Shreveport. And so for my junior year, I was going to be 16. I was going to be in a co-ed school instead of an all-girls school. And there were going to be boys and nobody was going to know me and everything was going to be perfect. It was all a freaking mind game. We didn't have the internet. I got ridiculed. I was wearing hand-me-downs. I was not confident. I would come home and cry my eyes out. My mom's like, I'm dealing with my own stuff. Go away. So I didn't have that outlet. I didn't have that. And then to top it off, I was living out of district. So I couldn't even talk to my neighborhood kid friends because they weren't supposed to know I wasn't in the school that everybody else in the neighborhood went to. So I was very shut off. That being said, if you put that same kid in that world now, you couldn't hide that easily. And you're going to get picked on even more so than just being in school. I could walk away, go home and cry. Now, they can find me on my phone and harass me on Facebook.
It follows you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the harsh reality of bullying these days. I was very blessed. I didn't really have to deal with the bullying, like not very much at all. And yeah, I see the effects though. And one thing you brought up about young people, like it like eats me away inside, because like in a way I see a lot of like younger Matts in the crowd, and so often there'll be like a bunch of them coming up to me and sharing, Matt, you're the first person I've ever told that I've been feeling XYZ, been doing XYZ, thinking XYZ for God knows how long now. And like, it really eats me up inside, because it just shows the importance of like, we're not talking about this enough. And there's that stigma behind it, that because it is, it is uncomfortable to talk about, because it's like walking around outside naked. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, this is who I really am. This is complete vulnerability. Like, and to be able to show that though is where our true strength really lies. It's just about tapping into it.
Well, you're talking about the stigma. There's even the stigma for having survived my mother, because not only did I have all the neighbors to address at the time when she tried to attempt it when I was in high school, and explain, as the ambulance is taken away, oh, she has the stomach flu. how else do you explain this? But this is something that has followed
Mm,
me through my life because family health history. Okay, well, father alive, here's his health history. Mother dead. How did she die? Okay, so it follows you. You can't get away from it. And then you're like, well, she did this. Oh, okay. So have you had any depressive thoughts? Look, everybody, and I'm going to say this, and I think everybody in the world has thought that they were worthless at one point or another. I'm not making light of your story. I'm talking about something that none of us talk about. We all put on
yeah.
this nice facade that we're all happy all the time. I remember I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and they put me on a medication called, I'm not going to give the name because then I might get in trouble. Anyway, they put me on a medication, and then within 3 days, I started feeling like my life didn't matter. I felt like my husband would be better off without me, which was the furthest thing from the truth. But I started feeling this, and because of my mom, because of the gift my mom was, because she had passed, and I recognized those signs, I saw them in me, and I was able to say, "Wait a second, stop." I think part of the problem is when we have those thoughts, people don't realize that it's in that moment. We need to step back from that moment. We need to look at what is really going on in the world because we can overcome almost everything we go through if we have the support. And that's where you hadn't had that support because you didn't reach out and you had the wall up.
That's it. I didn't allow for it in my life for so long. And yeah, it's the one thing I resisted, but it's one thing I needed to learn, which was just open up and share. It's like it's like a bottle, right? Like it's like what 600 ml bottle. You can't even see it. There you go. If an emotion comes up, right, like it's there. We have two options. You can accept it or suppress it. If we choose to suppress it, like try to fight the water, that water is going to rise a little bit higher. But the emotion comes up again, which it will, it's at a higher level. If we keep suppressing and we keep experiencing, it's going to get to a point where when we're at 600 and we suppress, we fight it, it makes a mess and spills over, and everything around it gets affected. That's a
Mm-hmm.
breaking point. It's exact same with you and I. We all have a breaking point, right? And our breaking points affect the people around us. And to people that are listening that potentially thinking about suicide and thinking they're not worth it. I mean, I firmly believed for so long that it was no one cared. You know, I thought like my ex might care the slightest bit. So I sent her a message. But that wasn't, yeah, I mean, like, it just wasn't the case. People cared. People
Yeah.
came to visit me in hospital, and people, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't able to lower my bottle down at the time. It took me actually going through my breaking point to realizing that, learning it. But yeah, that it's important.
Well, here's the thing. Even if somebody would have reached out, because I reached out to my mom before she did it. Before the final time she did. I mean, that's a whole nother, which I will go into in a minute. But reaching out to her, I told her, I said, there's more. You don't know what tomorrow's going to be. You don't know what is in store. And after she did it, I went to this group and there was this couple there that had lost their daughter. And she was 16, very much like the situation you were in, but she had been consistently trying to commit suicide and she finally was successful. And they really summed it up because my mom, talking to my father, my mom had done it when I was little. And they summed it up as that their daughter had completed her mission. No matter how many times they tried to get help for her, she was resistant. And I mean, there are some people that they're never going to feel that there's hope, but all we can do is try and reach out and be there for the other person because you
Mm.
never know.
No, of course, of course. You never know. And like people love to put on a brave face, like you mentioned, putting that smile for everyone. It's easier to, right? It's easier to say, look, I'm happy all the time.
Mhm.
Because you don't have to really show what your true self. You don't have to show maybe what you've been hiding for so long. And it takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. Though, like I said with the bottle, when it fills up, right, the other option is to accept the water, right? Accept your emotions. So what does that look like? Well, with a water bottle, we drink it.
Yeah.
Right. So with our emotions, we feel it. We actually allow ourselves to feel down. It's okay to feel down, which is I believe, another misconception where it's like, no, we shouldn't feel like that. No, there's nothing you should or shouldn't feel. There's only what is and what you're experiencing. And so by allowing yourself to feel and experience your emotions, it brings a space where you are able to actually articulate it a little bit easier to someone if you are to go and approach someone for support, which is the last part of drinking water. You let it out the other end.
Yeah.
And so you let out your emotions as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Share them with people.
I mean, I think that for so long, and I've talked about this with other people, it's so generational that we are raised that, especially for men, they're not supposed to show their emotions. They're not supposed to cry. I remember when my grandfather died, I was down in New Orleans, and my dad, I was supposed to be there for a whole week. And my dad sent me back to Texas because I was living in Texas at the time. He's like, nope, going back home. And I'm like, but all my cousins, everybody's staying here. No, go back home. And later on, I found out it was because he didn't want me to see him cry. I mean, how crazy is that? You just lost your father. I'm your daughter, and I was only 21 at the time, so it wasn't like I was a little kid. I was a grown woman, but nope, can't see me cry. Okay, that it made absolutely no sense to me, but that's how he was raised. That's how he was raised. So
yeah, and it's a generational thing that we're having to battle with, because it's so common in a lot of people's cultures. Not just men, but anyone. We don't show our emotions. We keep them to ourselves, right? And the whole have a cup of concrete, harden up sort of thing. Like that mentality has been around for a long time.
There was, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's just about, I mean, us just breaking the mold, just like doing our bit to shatter that stigma.
There was, I've talked about it before. I lost my husband, and there's been times when, when the year anniversary rolled around, that I would have to do a podcast, and I'm sitting there and I'm talking on my podcast, smiling and everything. And then one day I actually took two pictures back to back, one when I was doing the podcast and one afterwards when I'm in tears, because I'm doing my job, which isn't really a job. It's more me entertaining myself, I guess, but I'm doing my job. I'm talking to other people. I'm getting a message out to somebody else, and hopefully somebody else is listening, which I know they are. But I'm not letting you guys see me cry. I mean, there is one episode where, I do break down in tears because we're talking about grief, but nobody's tuning in to hear me cry. Does that make sense? I mean, we're talking here about something serious, and yes, you could have ended up in tears, and and you have every right to, because we're talking about something serious, and this was something that altered your life. But you also understand the gift you got and the reward you got, even though your life is forever changed. You see the good that came out of it. And that's the one thing I think that all of us have to look at. What are the expectations that we have in our life? We're not worthless. We need to quit looking for outside validation. And it's gotten worse because of the social media, for outside validation, that instant gratification, that outside, we're competing with computers. Do you think computers are going to reward you all the time?
That's interesting.
That algorithm can give you high likes one day, show your video on TikTok or show your video wherever, and then it can crash you the next day.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And how does that make you feel?
That's the thing, right? But that's because we place so much meaning and emphasis on that, like on social media, on like that being our lives. And it's, I agree. It's so unhealthy. It's so unhealthy when we do it to that extent, right? Obviously, you can use social media for good. I'm not saying you can't. It's definitely a blessing, though very much in disguise.
Yeah. I mean, there's times you can connect with the person that is hurting so bad. And like I said, if somebody tunes into this and gets something from this, if we make a difference for one person, then we've done something amazing here. And if we reach, 100 people, that's even better. But the fact of the
Mm.
matter is, I'm on one continent, you're on another continent, and we're having this conversation about something that both of us have been through, just in different ways.
And it also represents the fact that it's not, specific cultures or whatever. No, it's universal,
Mhm.
and this is something that affects everyone, because we all have emotions.
Yeah.
We'll have a mind that we're looking to manage and keep as well as we can.
Yeah. And I mean, mental health is something that always amazes me, that people, mental health should be one of the top things that we treat and take care of. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be about medication. I'm not saying medication is a bad thing, but also talking about and getting, reframing your emotions and reframing your feelings. One thing I've learned while doing this podcast is about expectations and is about perfection. Because, you know, like you with the picture, you wanted that perfect image. You got that perfect image, but it still wasn't exactly what you needed, you know?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Because I'm trying to fix what's inside with everything outside. Right. And when you become dependent on your external environment to dictate your internal emotions, that's when you know you're in trouble and you're stuck, because you no longer have power over your life. Rather, life has power over you.
And let's take this to a different level. Besides, you are a normal person. Imagine being someone that is in the public eye all the time, and under that kind of scrutiny all the time. And I'm not saying to feel sorry for them, but just imagine that life. If life for us sometimes gets to be overwhelming, the person that has that much scrutiny on them, how hard is it to deal with?
Of course, yeah.
But we look at it and we go, oh well. I mean, everybody's about free Britney. Everybody's happy that Britney's getting free and all this. But if you think about Britney, she had this great career, and then she had this, and you were pretty young, but then she had that massive meltdown, and everybody was chasing after her, like, you know, with pitchforks and flaming torches, bashing her. But why? She was under such scrutiny, and then she had a mental breakdown, and everybody was just there tearing a piece out. And then she ended up in this situation. But if we didn't put
Mhm.
so much pressure on somebody that was so young, would she have been able to handle it better?
I suppose it's a question we'll never know, but the
No,
answer to. But yeah, that is a
no.
great question, though.
But I mean, that's something that we put pressure on people, and it's whether it's the athlete, whether it's the singer, whether it's even just our parents putting pressure on us. I mean, did you ever feel like your parents put so much pressure on you to achieve something, or you just didn't feel like, I know you said you didn't feel connected to them, but what was the underlying reason you didn't feel connected? Was it that they were so focused on their own lives?
The underlying reason I didn't feel connected to my parents, my dad, like at the time, I never saw as a role model, and my mum, let's just say for personal reasons, I felt really disconnected from her. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I mean, like, I mean, we all fulfill our needs in certain ways. It's just about looking at how we are fulfilling them, right? Like we all need connection in our lives. If I was looking at the time how I was achieving the connection, it just wasn't healthy at all. And the gym is one of the most positive things, if you ask me. Like I'm all about fitness and keeping healthy. I still go to the gym to this day. Well, not throughout lockdown, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I yeah, but like I regularly keep fit. I regularly exercise and all that stuff. So I mean, it's just about your intention.
Yeah. I agree.
That's really all it is. Yeah.
I mean, I
And
just go ahead.
sorry, no, you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
With like it's a little bit off topic though. If I was to look at myself when I was, let's say 15, hell 12. go back to the root of it all. If I was to ask myself, uh, if there's some people in your life, like for example, your parents, brother, your sister, or even your best mate at the time, would you be there for them? Like if they were struggling,
Yeah.
I'd tell you, absolutely, I would have been. It took my attempt at ending up in hospital to find out that those people that I cared about actually cared for me. And so one message I love to pass on as well is just being able to see that side of it as well and flip it on its head. Okay, if I support these people, would they be there for me as well? So I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, they will be.
And that's the important thing, knowing that you have people around you to support you in whatever situation that comes up.
Exactly right. Because life as it is already an uphill battle, right?
Mhm.
Why climb up that hill with bricks in your backpack?
Yeah.
You can let loose of some of them.
Yeah. I
And
mean, like for me, with when my husband passed, I learned who my true friends were. I learned who, because that's a whole nother avenue of people don't know how to react with you. They don't know how to handle you because suddenly you're not the same person, which I know that's something you're very familiar with.
yeah, absolutely.
How many people treated you differently?
Like straight after?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Everyone.
Yeah.
Except a few people. Except a few people. Like they saw, I was still the same person. Like I was just now physically different. Yes, they saw a side of me which they didn't at the time, but yeah, still everyone felt like they were on eggshells.
Yeah.
They had to be very cautious with everything they were doing, everything they were saying, like, oh, am I spending too much time with him, or stuff like that, even. And it's the last thing I wanted because I was still me. I just wanted to be treated like me, not like this label or whatever idea that people have in their own heads. So that in itself was a bit of a hurdle to overcome.
And have they, since all this time has passed, have some of those people walked out of your life, or have they started treating you more like they used to?
With the people that come in and out, it's not that I'm really like aware of it. What I'm aware of though is now how I view myself, because that's directly proportionate with how other people are viewing me. And the moment I realized that, everything started to change. Because and like in my day-to-day interactions now, like I go out in public, I personally, this is just my perspective, I don't view people seeing me as that guy in the chair, so to speak, like I used to. Beforehand, yeah, I viewed that because I thought, shit, I'm the only one around here that's in a chair. Like I feel like the odd one out, especially when I went back to school. But the moment I started to carry myself in a way that didn't even like address the chair, like I am me, and that was it. Things started to shift, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, when you think about it, that's a whole nother aspect. We don't embrace disability necessarily in the world. We it goes back to, we embrace perfection. We don't want to look at the imperfect. We don't want to look at the person that's in the wheelchair. We don't want to see the person as a whole being when we should.
Of course, yeah, and it's because it's easier to do that, right? It's easier to say, okay, well, I have this idea of perfection that I see each and every day on social media, on TV, on wherever, right? Magazines. I'm seeing perfect all the time, but when something that's not perfect is in front of me, it's like intimidating. But that whole like embracing the disability thing, I think, is a whole nother topic of conversation, because I then decided to change how I view myself, but how I now identify, like what I identify with, so to speak. And yeah, that's a whole nother set of stories in terms of that. But
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, I've talked to other people about it. It's the label thing, it's, are you your label? Why do you have to be labeled? Why? if you're able to do what you need to do to be the person you want to be, then why do you need a label?
Do you mind if I sidetrack into
No, go ahead. It's a
a
cafe
story?
conversation.
So, like like I'm talking about labels, right? So after hospital and rehab and all that stuff, I was now on a disability pension, right? I was getting what, like close to $500 every fortnight for doing nothing, essentially, right? Because I had a disability.
Mhm.
Now, I had that for a couple of years. Then I went on a, what do you call it, meditation retreat. But a week before the retreat, I had to submit how much money I'd been earning for my talks. So that was affecting my pension at the time. And I was in the gym, I hit submit, and for some reason it didn't go through. It came up with an error, and it said, your message was not received. Please call us to figure this out. Now, if you've met anyone, Donna, in Sydney or in Australia in general, who has to deal with Centrelink, let's just say you're not getting through to them. It's at least 2 hours on hold, sort of thing. And I'm like, I'm not calling you. A week after the retreat, I get this message saying, Matt, your payments have now been cancelled. Please call us to figure this out. And I was like, this is my money. What are you talking about? And so I called them up. And after about 15 minutes of being on hold, I had this thought and this feeling, and it's a strong like feeling of disgust, because on that week, on that meditation retreat, I had all these experiences there. But I really like saw like myself in a way. And I asked myself, Matt, are you really a speaker? And is disabled something you want to walk around with the rest of your life? You have dreams, Matt. Why are you setting your dreams short because you have a safety net to fall into? I hung up the phone and haven't called them back. That was what, over 3 years ago now, give or take.
Wow.
And it's funny. The moment, just relating back to the whole like perfection and like, how other people view you is how you view yourself. It's funny because after I hung up the phone on Centrelink and decided to not call them back and give up my disability pension, then give up my pensioner Opal card, then give up my disability parking permits, all that stuff I gave up. I then get the next gig I get was the highest paying speaking gig I had gotten at the time. Funny that, right? And I started getting more gigs. And then my rehab started to progress further and further as well, believe it or not. Donna, I have what they call a complete spinal cord injury, where your spinal cord is severed in two and no nerves are supposed to be sent between. When gyms are open, I'm on the bike in the gym, pedaling away. I'm every day still doing sit to stands with my trainers at home, working towards my goals. And I, quote unquote, shouldn't have anything back, yet I am progressing.
Nice.
The crux of all this, of what I'm talking about, is how I'm viewing myself and what I'm identifying with. By me choosing a different identity and label, it's hard. Everyone tells you you're crazy. Everyone says, Matt, why are you giving up your parking sticker? Are you serious? Matt, you give up your pension. What are you talking about? Matt, why would you give up all these things? It's like, no, this is not who like I'm identifying with. I am this, not that. And that was a yeah. And like it's just like constantly for like 2 years, people just talking shit about me. But hey, it worked. It worked.
That's all that matters. I mean, if you're recovering, that's an incredible thing all in itself. I have a really weird question for you.
Please.
Do you remember anything from your coma?
No, I don't.
Okay.
So beforehand, I remember sneaking out, I remember jumping. I don't remember hitting the ground. Then just black for like a while. And then I woke up in hospital. Yeah, nothing from coma.
Because some people remember their comas. I've read stories about people remembering their comas.
Wow.
So yeah,
That'd be an interesting read. I
yeah,
I remember waking up and thinking initially, like, was this an afterlife or something?
yeah. I can
Like
imagine.
for a little bit, but yeah.
Wow. So you feel pretty, you definitely, I mean, I'm not even gonna ask the better two thing because it's obvious that even though, most people would be like, oh my gosh, you are thriving. And I mean, dare I say you're thriving more than you were before this all happened.
Oh, absolutely. To say I was thriving before my injury is you'd be very misguided.
Well, the outside was thriving. The
Yes, it
image that
was.
everybody else saw was thriving. Internally, you
Mm,
weren't, but
exactly right. Exactly right. And that's, I mean, if it's what's internal that really does matter. Though one thing I've come to realize is that we all sort of need to go through this journey of like maybe coming to face adversity in life. Not no one can have a perfect life, but that's how you're going to really be able to experience and see that it's what's inside that counts. That the internal is so much more important. And yeah, I'm just blessed to still be able to be here and share that message and help others get to that place.
I think,
But
one
yeah.
thing that you've talked about several times over, and I wholeheartedly agree, is the external is the problem, a lot of it, because we are taught from an early age, whether it be school or whatever, you have to look a certain way, you have to have certain grades, you have to do this, you have to. So there's all these external expectations placed upon you.
Mm.
And then as you get older, guys used to have it easy when I was younger, but now guys have the same problems we do. Oh, look at the fashion magazine. Oh, look at Instagram models. I need to look like this. I actually had a male model on. I had two. One of them won a contest over in Australia. The other one is here in the States, but the one here in the States talked about how he needs several weeks to get in shape before a photo shoot because he doesn't walk around like that. He says,
Mm.
I like carbs. I
Mm.
like pizza. I'm not gonna, I don't look like this all the time. But yet, you look at the male model in the magazine or on the book cover and it's like, well, he looks really good. But the whole fact of the matter is it's an illusion, just like the perfect woman.
But it's all we're seeing. And so we naturally think, oh shit, they are always like that. And so I need to always be that. If I want
Hmm.
to be attracted to girls or guys or whatever, no, I've got to, become what perfection is.
Hmm. And I mean, for me, I'm gonna age myself. I'm in my early 50s. And, for me, it's like I had a husband who was legally blind. So for years, I didn't have to care how I looked. It didn't matter. And then I decided to come on make a public platform where guess what? I have to make sure I look halfway good. So, I have to step back sometimes and go, okay, you're not going to look like you did when you were 20. So just accept the wrinkles, accept what you look like, and do what you do. This is not about you looking anyway, but you still getting those external trappings. That what am I putting out there? Who do I look like? What do I look like? So there's still that external worry that I'm not good enough.
Mm, mm.
So
That worry in itself, I'm not good enough, is one of the biggest things. Like everyone, I believe, has thought at least once in their life.
and that being said, I don't feel that way now, but I mean initially it was one of those things. It's like, okay, so why would anybody tune this in and why would anybody want to watch this? And there was all the external thought process of why are you doing this? Same thing with
Uh,
why did you want to get up and speak? When you're being presented with that opportunity, I'm sure you were sitting there, you said you were a nervous wreck, and I'm sure in the back of your head you're like, nobody's gonna listen to me.
that's exactly what I thought. Yeah. But then I'm also thinking, well, they were thinking of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's that weird like paradox going on in your own head. And hell, I remember like just going back into the public, like as someone in a wheelchair, like what are people thinking of me? Shit, like people are going to think I'm retarded or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Because you
it's,
weren't normal.
yeah, whatever normal is.
But that's the thing. What is normal? What is really normal? Is there really a depth, just like you were saying, a redneck, is there really a normal person? Is everybody's got their own little thing, whether it's a mental issue or a physical issue. We all have a thing. And we really just need to be, dare I say, get along, get rid of being so divided.
I mean, it's one thing that I'm a big advocate for is empathy. So what it allows is to put you in the other person's shoes and see their perspective, why they are the way they are, why they do what they do. And what that allows is for appreciation rather than comparisons.
Yeah.
Right. And it's such a much more beautiful place to operate from. Instead of, like, for example, like whenever someone like talks bad about me or whatever, and not this is just like where my mind naturally goes. It's like, I wonder how bad of a day they've had to feel the need to share such hate. I mean, I wonder what's going through their mind. I wonder how they feel as a result, right? If we're able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and at least try to, I feel like, yeah, we definitely come from a place of more unity because we're appreciating one another rather than comparing ourselves and creating disconnect as a result.
And I think that that's very important, because if we're able to look at what somebody else is going through, when somebody is enraged or mad or whatever, if we actually step back and say, okay, so what's really going on with them? I mean, 9 times out of 10, if you've gotten in an argument with somebody, there were times when my husband, him and I would have an argument, and it usually wasn't even something really, I mean, he'd be like, motherfucker. and I'd go in there because he couldn't see. He's in the kitchen cooking. He loved to cook. So I'm letting him cook. And he'd say that. And I'd be like, what's wrong? He's like, is your name? And I'm like, no. And I'd walk away because I knew that he was agitated. And he wasn't agitated with me, because here's the story. So I'd come back a half hour later. I'm like, you okay? Yeah, that wasn't about you. I'm sorry. It was because he couldn't see. He couldn't see what he was doing. So he screwed up something. So then he gets ticked off and he curses. And then, but you have to learn to, if I would have had this relationship when I was in my 20s and my husband would have done that, I would have been like, yeah, no. I would have just been back at him. I would have said, how dare you say that to me? But instead, stepping back, and I think that's the thing, we need to step back when we have a conflict with somebody and go, okay, give them space, then come back and say, you okay?
If we were to do that with most people that we disagree with, or we had maybe we lashed out at, or they lashed out at us, I'm sure most things would just settle right down, because there's just a mixture of things playing out at that time that maybe we weren't aware of.
Right. And I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if we are more compassionate with each other and more open with our emotions, I think we would be a lot further along and we could handle and navigate life much better. But instead, we plug in and we get divided. We get divided over and over and over again. And I think that's where we need to kind of step back. It's like, sometimes the media, they gain something by dividing everybody, by making us argue with each other. Guess what? Their ratings go up, and they get, and what's happening to us? All we're doing is creating more stress for our lives. And I'm not saying we can't be stress free, but if we can reduce some of that stress and get along and figure out how we can navigate life with each other, then I think we'd be a better place. And I think what you're doing is a gift.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. It takes effort, though, to be able to come to that place with, no matter who you are, to be able to, understand, empathize, and appreciate one another. It takes more effort. It does. Though, what's going to give you a better life at the end of the day? I'm curious. I know the answer.
Well, and this is what I was going to say. Isn't life worth the effort? If you
That's
really,
exactly right.
I think that's a lesson you came to the point to realization of, isn't it?
Mm, absolutely. It's why I now live life the way I do now.
So, where do you see yourself in about 5 years?
5 years. I really see like so. I mean, personally or professionally, or is just does that
Just
matter?
in general, it doesn't matter. I mean, it can be personal, it can be professional. It's up to you.
Yeah. Well, professionally, I definitely see myself building more than just my own brand. Like I want to build in a way like a movement, like of so it'd be a business where it's like, okay, all these different like courses you can do, like education, which is all going to be based around um mental health, mental fitness, people's like being more self-aware of their emotions.
Sorry.
um so sorry, I got too distracted there. Then also, I mean, like, so traveling more, because like I've traveled to speak beforehand, but doing that more often, I really see being like the future, like me traveling more. I do see myself having a girlfriend as well. And yeah,
Have you ever thought about
yeah,
writing a
yeah,
memoir?
I am.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of it though.
Kind of figured. I
So
just
that's been an interesting process as well, going into the intricacies and the very specific details of certain moments. That was interesting. Yeah.
I think I think what you do if you're talking to if you can reach a couple of kids and keep them from doing what you did, and not that it didn't have a wonderful outcome for you. I mean, but it cost you too. So by you actually being able to help somebody and maybe even help parents realize. I mean, that's another thing now. I mean, parents are so busy and so stressed and so distracted themselves. How can they see when their kid is hurting?
Yeah. And it's, I mean, because they have enough responsibilities as it is, then to have your son or daughter be struggling, it's not only like massive for you to handle. A lot of parents don't know how to handle it,
But
which is another issue. And a lot of parents, they feel disconnected from their teens or their kids, and that's in itself really does breed, like, can breed the disconnect and the depression, anxiety down the line. And though one thing I've always found is when that connection is strengthened, it always like brings about beautiful results.
if you
And
could
yeah,
give advice to a parent, what would you tell them? As far as I'm saying, somebody else's parent, if they're worried about their child, what would you tell them?
if they're worried or they know that there's something going on.
They suspect something's going on and they're not quite sure how to approach it because they do feel disconnected from their child.
Yeah, first thing is the presence of the parent. So when I say that, let's use listening as an example. When your child is talking to you, are you actually listening? So firstly, physically listening, like, is your physical presence with them? Like, are you on your phone, you washing the dishes, doing paperwork, cooking, or are you actually there with them? Secondly, mentally listening, is all your attention and focus on the words that they're saying, trying to understand what they're sharing with you. Thirdly, emotionally listening, putting yourself in their shoes, again, empathy, trying to understand why they feel the way they feel, putting yourself in your kids' shoes. How would they be feeling if I was going through this right now? So yeah, that being put the first key thing, because Donna, I'm sure you pick up on it. When people aren't listening to you, it's easy to tell, right?
Yeah.
Easy to tell. And if you're being honest and raw and vulnerable with them and they're not listening, how's that going to make you feel?
Yeah. It does. It makes
Right.
you feel alone.
Yeah, exactly right. You're alone, belittled, whatever it may be, though it's never going to be good. Though if the opposite happened and we felt understood, then it's a bit different. Because now there's a rapport building between us. Now I feel more comfortable to be vulnerable with you. So I can feel your presence. I can feel that, you actually support me. And yeah, I run workshops on this, like with corporates. Like I literally just did one last week with a government developer. Anyways, like the 3 cornerstones to meaningful connection. I love this stuff: presence, rapport, vulnerability. There are things that come in between there, but as a takeaway note and something to maybe go into further, those 3 things I would say.
Well, I mean, I think back to the situation I mentioned earlier about me. It's like coming home crying and knocking on my mom's bedroom door saying, hoping that she would listen, and her not being there, not being available, telling me she had her own stuff. And I understand she did. But in that moment, if I would have been a different kid, Lord only knows what I could have done. You know, I mean, that,
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, we're now very blessed in today's society where we can actually access professional supports, right? And so this can be for your kid, but this can also be for you as well. If you have your own struggles and pressures going on at the moment, and then your child is also struggling, ensure you have supports for you, whether it be close friends or close people or professionals. You need someone in your life that's going to support you, because you don't have to do it alone. You can, but it's a lot smoother with support.
One thing my mom did right, and I've talked about this before, is when I was a little kid after their divorce, I was acting out, so she made sure I had a therapist. And so I started therapy around 10. So I knew that you could talk to somebody professionally. And that growing up in the 70s, that was kind of taboo. But I'm glad she did it, because when there was times in my life that I needed a therapist, I wasn't hesitant to reach out for that help. It wasn't stigmatized. It was okay. So
yeah,
I want to say, if anybody that's listening, this is most likely not going to be available to younger people necessarily, because I dropped the F-bomb and, there's restrictions because of that. But, and you said a couple of things, but if a parent's listening and you think that there's some value for your child or your teen, and I think there's some serious value, let them listen and take some advice and get them the help that they need. And I'm going to have some links there for suicide prevention and whatnot, because this is a very important topic. It really is. And there's more people that are hurting and suffering in silence than we know and admit. So let's break the stigma.
Exactly right. It doesn't discriminate. It affects all of us, and the more we break the stigma, the more connected I believe we will be as a society as well.
Yeah. So I thank you very much, Matt. And gang, you take care.
Thank you, Donna.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Better 2 podcast. Your listenership is greatly appreciated. If you like what you hear, remember to hit subscribe. We also have our videos on YouTube. They're usually posted the same day as the podcast, and you should check it out. If you have a question or you would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me an email, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it. The email is Donna, Dauna, at thebetter2podcast.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and catch you next time.